Welcome to Bodybuilding Radio. We are back with little Dave with another episode on Monday. And man, C-Bum competes in the open. A big day in the bodybuilding world.
Yeah,
So what I thought we would do is what were your let's just start with this. Your first impressions when he came out. And I mean, listen, the internet was flooded with photos and different angles and different lights. So what was your first impression when you saw him before you saw him stand beside anyone?
honestly, how well he poses is he is so gifted at that.
Agreed.
Or just the amount of work he puts in the posing. Because like in reality, like Martin's a phenomenal poser too.
Yes.
And like he was working Martin
Yeah.
posing wise. Martin definitely had him on a lot of as far as open bodybuilding goes, right? Density, size, all that jazz. But like posing wise, like Chris is really good at what he does there.
Agreed.
And that's like the first thing I noticed. I was like, dang, this guy is not missing at all here.
That that is a lesson that I pray everyone learns, right? And I think that's the benefit Chris has of doing classic is those guys at the high level, your posing has to be impeccable, like flawless. There is zero your gut hangout. Where in open bodybuilding, you and I both know, like there's going to come a point where everyone's going to like let it hang a little bit. It's just bodybuilding. Occasionally, like I remember that one New York pro they talk or Arnold where they were talking about like Nick was like a statue up there. Hottie's really good at that for the most part. Samson is too. Um, but as a whole, classic, I think all day long, you can tell the effort and intensity, and I'm literally choosing the word intensity on purpose that they put into posing. Like,
Mhm.
and listen, I'm guilty of that as much as probably the rest of us bodybuilders are. Posing is an afterthought. We think, oh, we train, we eat our meals, we do our cardio, we take our supplements, and we're going to be peeled and it'll work on stage. But when you stand beside someone like Chris, who literally puts as much effort into his posing as he does, say, a work set of hack squats, you can tell. And that's one of the things I noticed on top of the posing and presentation was how his tan was. And I know that sometimes can be out of your control, but is it really? Like,
Yeah.
if your tan's not right, you got to speak up. And listen, I've always thought this is if you paid the money to get tanned by professionals, their job is to make you look flawless. And because you are a direct reflection of their work. I mean, that one show you had, what at USA's, you were fucking green.
Hmm.
They had to fix it.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a choice. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things I noticed when Chris walked out by himself in the individual. I was like, God, his tan is fucking perfect compared to the other guys that I'd seen before him. And you and I both know that makes a world of a difference.
Yeah.
If your tan is good, not only does it highlight your physique, but it makes it pop on stage drastically better. And I know that's a small nuance of bodybuilding, but it's something that's always eaten me alive is, a guy can work 12, 16, 20 weeks to perfection and then a tan fucks him. Like
Hmm.
that's heartbreaking. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, so okay. You said posing, I said tanning and presentation, same shit. What did you think about him stature wise in comparison to let's just talk specifically the top three of him, Martin, and Sean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like his front lat is actually pretty impressive.
Agreed.
From mostly, in my opinion, from the waist up, from the waist down, Sean and Martin are blown out of the water.
Yeah.
Like Chris's legs, he has quads. Like I'm not saying he doesn't have legs, but those guys have more legs.
Yeah.
Like the roundness and the fullness and the density of those guys' legs is on a different level than Chris's.
Yeah.
You know, it was almost like I want to be rude, but it's almost like he was a bikini competitor and they were wellness girls. They both have ass. One just has more.
Yeah. You know, I think Chris does a great job hiding that from the side. Like his legs are fuller and rounder, and I think honestly even a little harder from the side. Like his side leg
Yeah,
is very good.
yeah,
Up front, they look very up and down.
hmm
It it's kind of, and that to me stems. It's like adductor to sweep. Like
yeah,
just all his quads aren't round enough. Um, but it's literally the meat or the thing circumference of legs. That's something that'd be a fun fact to know if you like put a tape measure around those three's quads or their leg and see what it measured and what the difference was.
Yeah.
Um,
And then also realize what Chris is 6'2" and Martin's 5'6" and Sean's 5'5", 5 flat.
yeah,
You
that
know,
yeah, it's a big difference. Yes. Um, and I told you this to start, a handful of people asked me what my thoughts were, and I was like, initially I thought, man, he's holding his, meaning Chris was holding his own here. And then the more I looked at it, the more I studied, the more videos I watched on it, the density discrepancy between him and the other two, meaning Sean and Martin, was very evident the more I watched. And
hmm.
that's when I told you, I said, I bet in person it was even more drastic.
Yeah.
And knowing that Steve was the head judge, if I was a betting man, I would have said Martin and I would
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people could even have argued that if you can overlook the height discrepancy, if you truly judge it by bodybuilding standards, should Sean have beaten Chris? I don't think anyone would have argued with it. It just
No.
looks funny when the height is this is drastically
Yeah.
different.
Yeah. You have almost a full foot. You have, well, 14 inches down.
You're right. It's enormous. And then if you look at like, shoulder width, that plays a big part. And I mean, you listen to like Lee Haney or Arnold, and they'll say a big man should never lose to a small man. Like, right? And we saw that at Olympia with Samson compared to Derek and Hottie. Like,
Yeah.
it's hard because the optical illusion initially, like if you look at it from a zoomed out, is Chris is drastically bigger than both of these men.
Yeah.
Bone wise, you're 1,000% right. He is, but when you go back and like look at it through a fine tooth lens, as I saw through finals, is like you begin to see like, okay, there's a gap, there's gaps here, and there's gaps here, and in particular, it was like limbs were the first thing that jumps out, right? I mean, you can't argue that Martin and Sean's arms aren't drastically bigger and better than Chris's. Like it's just a fact. And then once you start looking at like what I've always called like what most people refer to as density, I call like muscle projection, like it jumping off the bone. So if you look at like Sean's lats off the bone versus Chris's. Now, does Chris have a wider back and maybe more detail? You could argue that, but it's not a detail show. And I think the problem is when Chris filled out and added, I think they said 8 pounds of difference in weight, he lost a little bit of that crisp, like nasty detail to get the more fullness. Now, you and I both know, like, I think I like the fuller look on him a little bit better than the crispy, nasty
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah. I like the flow of him a lot more.
Agreed. So it was a proper trade-off. But when you lose the detail that you've seen, it's almost like, huh, he's not as he looks different than classic. Well, you're damn right he looks different than classic. He's fuller.
Yeah.
So it's a weird game that I'm sure him and Hani had to play with like fullness to crisp or dry as whatever you want to call that shit. Like and you could see that a lot specifically from the side leg. Normally that shit, those lines are so damn deep from like the point of his hip down to his kneecap.
Yeah.
And again, the fullness in the quad looked more impressive to me than a few extra lines. So,
Yeah.
do you think that? I know a lot of people would say, "Oh, well, how would he have placed in the Olympia lineup?" I think it's lower than fifth.
Yeah.
That correlation was all over the internet, right? Well, if Chris is second to Martin and Martin was fourth, he was fifth, and I'm like, I think that's a stretch,
Yeah.
personally. If you put Chris beside Hunter, what does that look like? And I think you and I both know what that
Yeah. Yeah. We know
looks.
exactly how that looks like. Just him next to Martin.
Right, right. I mean, I think about Hunter's strengths, right? It's like appendages, and I mean his legs and arms to me always jump off the banana
Yeah.
page about you, and it's like you talking about really being a discrepancy. That's when you would start to see things. I really wish that Akeem would have done this show.
Yeah.
So you could see like what another big bodybuilder looks like. I'm not, I mean, talking shit on Sean, by the way, but someone who's 5'10", 270.
Yeah,
besides that's what it looks like. You know what I mean?
super true.
Or even Brandao, like that would have been another good comparison in my opinion.
Yeah.
That we didn't get, but
Or someone like either Samson or Andrew, who are both 6 foot.
correct. Yeah.
Like, you know,
I think if you put Chris in between Samson and Andrew, that would hurt a bunch of feelings.
yeah,
That would because I mean they listen, those two men have, in my opinion, two of the best sets of quads on the fucking planet right now. Uh,
yeah,
and it's like, oh, and then neither of them have small arms. So and it's fuck Samson's like chest and abs, like yeah, that's a tough comparison.
yeah,
And that's what I think I've liked about watching all of this is the humility that Chris has shown through this. Like you don't hear him on podcasts saying he's going to win and he's going to push for the Open Olympia. He's just doing this for the love of the sport and to I think give back to the fans. But one of the coolest statements that I saw him make was, "I want to finish where I started."
yeah,
That's like a tip of the cap to paying homage to what got you here, right? And I think, especially in today's generation, that's I feel like you and I were raised to pay respect to the people that did this shit before us.
yeah,
We didn't feel the need to shit on previous generations to say we're better than them. And that's kind of the opposite of what, at least on social media, is portrayed right now. You see all these young guys like banging on Branch Warren and Jay and Ronnie, and it's like, man, like you wouldn't even there would be no fucking classic if it wasn't for those men. None. Contracts, supplement deals, none, all that shit is because of those men. Like,
mhm,
and then when you look at the generation before that of Lavrone and Dorian Yates and Flex Wheeler, Sean Ray, even though he's a terrible human, like all of those men help pave the way for that group. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. It was cool to listen to Chris say that and then to like put a definitive stamp like I'm done with bodybuilding. I'm done.
yeah,
Like I'm complete. He's not pulling that Kai Green shit where like every time the Olympia comes around, it's like, is Kai going to compete? Is he not? Like, no, he's done and moving on. And
yeah,
I think that's why so many people probably love his content and support him as much as they do is because of just how candid he is, not only with his thoughts and emotions, but how he portrays himself in real life and on the internet. So
yeah,
I hope more classic guys and 212 guys take a lead from this show and say, hey, man, like, stop sucking down your damn weight and melting muscle away. You can stand at these shows and be top five at,
yeah,
at the right show.
yeah. Or even, I was super happy with Chris because, like, I bet you see that at the local level, the amount of guys in bodybuilding versus classic. Like, I
Yeah.
think the last show I went to, there was 12 bodybuilders
Mhm.
and 56 classic guys,
Yep.
and 30 plus of those classic guys should have done bodybuilding.
Yes. Yep.
You know?
Agreed. Yep. The I just saw the overall winners at one of Quincy's elite show 2 weeks ago, and the classic guy should have won open bodybuilding.
Yeah,
And I don't know what the other classic guys look like. I don't know what the other bodybuilders look like, but that was the best male body on stage.
yeah,
Like, and I'm like, man, you're just in the wrong division. Like, because someone like that will go to the national level and finish third or fourth call out. Like,
yeah,
it's like, hey, you're in the wrong category. And I think so many believe, and I know I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Just because you can make classic weight doesn't mean that's what you are.
yeah. I see it way too often. It drives me up a wall when kids are cutting 15 plus pounds
Yeah.
to make weight for classic when they're not even complete bodybuilders.
Correct. Yes. Yep.
Like, that's the equivalent of me trying to do classic. Yeah, my weight cap's 165. I would look like a bag of shit on there, and I would be in like 10th at a local show. If I went to nationals as a classic physique, I went, scraping into 165 by like a gift from God, and a diet of air and sardines and like air and fish and air for 20 weeks,
Yeah. Yep.
just to take fifth call outs, because at that point I don't have any muscle groups.
But you can hit a vacuum though, so that's all that matters.
Yeah, yeah, there'd be nothing in my stomach for
Right.
20 plus weeks.
I don't for people who don't know, the first show you ever did with me was Classic.
Hmm.
And I can't remember how our conversation went, but I'm sure it went along the lines of, so you're going to be a bodybuilder,
Yeah,
right?
I thought that was just assumed.
Right. I don't even know if we spoke it out loud. That's how I knew we would get along well. Um, because the amount of people who push back on me, like I'll give you an example. I trained a guy all last year, um, incredible potential, young guy, early 20s, incredible shape. Um, but he was 10 weeks out from a show at probably 278, 275. And he was like, I'm doing classic, right? And I was like, I, I'm not in the business of melting muscle, man. Like, I think his weight was like 235.
Hmm.
I'm like, I don't see 40 pounds disappearing off of you unless it's muscle. And it was a point of contention for weeks, and then he just ghosted me and left.
Yeah,
And the sad thing is, I just saw him post not too long ago. He clearly had found a coach that's gonna do it, and he's a shell of himself. Like it's a horrible look.
yeah,
It reminded me of someone who had just been injured and was like skinny soft, not
yeah,
fat. Like there wasn't fat on his physique, but it's just the muscle's not hard. It's because it's melting away.
yeah,
And God knows how much his weight is or how close he is to the cap. I would have to assume it's starting to get close. But if I was a dick, I would have taken his last update that he sent to me and transposed it beside the thing he posted and be like, bro, look at this. Like, this is not a bet. You're closer to classic weight, but you don't have a better look, you know? And that's a
yeah,
pill to swallow because I think everyone assumes if I get that weight off, I'm going to look nasty.
yeah,
And the answer is probably not.
yeah.
So,
And I just had a conversation with one of my guys, and I was like, he competed in classic, his first time, and he's got good legs, but his upper body he needs 20 pounds up top.
right.
But we were already at his weight cap. I was like, I was like, I was like, he's like, yeah, let's definitely move. Because I was like, there's no chance. Like, we either have to take away from your legs,
Yeah.
because we're already there, dude. Like, you're at your weight cap.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know that's tough, right? Because I think sometimes people look at like bodybuilding, open bodybuilding, the top five at nationals or USA's, North Americans, and they're like, I'm not there. And I always say, not yet. Like,
Yeah,
but I also need you to look at the top guys who are winning classic at those three shows. You're not there either. So,
yeah,
like, or we're going to chase something that you're never going to achieve, or we're going to remove the governor, is how I'll look at it, of your weight cap, and let's see how freaky of a physique we can build. And I think a lot of times too is people think, oh, well, if I abandon that weight cap, I'm going to lose lines. As I said 1,000 times, a lot of times, guys, if you add muscle to the right places, their lines get better. That's you. Your
yeah,
physique has gotten more shapely as the more muscle we've put on you. Like
yeah,
you now have a great X frame from the front and the back and a front and back double.
yeah,
Why? Because we added muscles to your lats and your shoulders and your quads. No shit.
yeah, exactly.
Your hips don't grow. And if we
Yeah,
do this, motherfucker, that's an X.
yeah, exactly.
I'm not saying you're going to go win and beat people off the shape for Christ's sake. Don't
No.
don't don't get my words wrong. But your shape has drastically improved the bigger we have gotten you. And
Hmm.
I think sometimes people fucking forget that shit. Like bodybuilding when it started was classic physique,
Yeah,
meaning the criteria: small waist, flaring quads, wide shoulders, thick chest and back. That's what bodybuilding is to me. When I'm trying to make you your best, I have the same vision that any classic guy does, except I don't have a weight cap for you.
yeah,
It's And maybe that's because I was, born in the right time area to think like that's bodybuilding to me.
Yeah.
Uh, And now it's almost like people think, oh, bodybuilding is just big and freaky and classic is shape. And I'm like, no, not if it's done properly.
Yeah, take Martin for example.
Yes. Yeah.
That he has some of the best shape in the fucking world.
Agreed.
You know,
Yep.
if he tried to do classic, he would suck at it.
Agreed. Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
That's not like you could go back and look at his photos when he could make weight and tell me that's winning any pro show.
No, it's not. Yeah. And I think that's where a lot of guys struggle is they see the end and they don't realize that the end at all categories they'll probably never achieve. Whether
Yeah.
that's men's physique, classic physique, or bodybuilding or 212, right? So I've always thought, and maybe this is my jaded perspective, but the end goal of bodybuilding is to get as big and lean as possible. And if you continue to do that with your structure, it'll look better than it did last year and the previous year and the previous decade.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here by any means, but I posted check-in photos that I sent John on Sunday, and people are like, "Man, you're so much bigger." I'm like, "Well, fuck yeah, that's almost 6 years ago. I better be
Yeah.
fucking bigger."
Yeah.
Like, uh, you take that physique and think how many workouts were done, how many meals were eaten. Yeah, it's gonna be bigger and better, man. Like, even though I remember at the time I was like, I knew I needed to gain a lot more muscle, but I look back at it now and I'm like, oh, that's a cool spot for 2019. Like,
Yeah.
um, and I think a lot of times guys just fucking forget how long this shit takes. It's
Yeah.
for normal genetic people, right?
Yeah.
And I know that people might say you and I are skewed that we don't have normal genetics. And for the sport of competitive bodybuilding at the national and pro level, we have very normal or below average genetics.
Hmm.
And I know that's a tough pill for some to swallow, but it's just the damn truth.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I think my takeaways from this weekend are I absolutely love what Chris and Sean did for the sport.
Oh yeah.
Not having fear, not caring that even though they were the best in the world at their given division, that they're going to lose. Like, I think so many guys get caught up in their own damn head when they're at the top of that and they're so scared to compete. And people were talking shit about Samson doing France 2 weeks before Olympia. And he's like, wow, who gives a fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And
Whatever.
then he went. I mean, and then he wins.
Yep.
You know.
Yeah. And so many people, like, I think don't compete or they're scared to do a show because so and so's in it. And I'm like, man, you have one life. You're in great shape. Get on stage and compete. You're a bodybuilder. Fuck.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Funny thing, just like do your best and make them scared you're in the show.
Yes.
What was that when we did Wasatch Warrior 3 years ago?
Yep.
He worked at the same gym as me, and he actually won that show. But the entire time, like after the show, he came up to me. He's like, "Dude," he's like, "Every time I wanted to cheat on my diet, he's like, I know you aren't." I was like, "Damn right, I'm not."
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, you missed that meal, I'm fucking kicking your ass.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. That was a tough battle.
yeah, that was super close.
And yet that was a coin flip that didn't go in your way. And you didn't let it get in your way of
Yeah,
staying on your course.
yeah,
Right?
exactly. Just it is what it is. Just like
Yep.
all of the shows, like you cannot control who's going to be there. You can only control what goes in your mouth and your effort.
And with a normal competitor who hadn't been with as long as you, I would have had worry that after that loss, they would have called me or texted me and said, I'm switching coaches. Just being honest. Like
Yeah,
the amount of clients I've lost in a situation where I've had them at their best, they just got beat by someone at a show like that, and they've just completely said, fuck everything.
yeah,
Even though we've put on X amount of muscle and you got me my best, I need to find something else.
yeah,
That's never been a worry with me with you because your thoughts are very similar to mine. You're like, if I lose, it's not my day. I just guess what? Next time I need to be better. And it's the reason you won your overall last year
hmm
because you showed up and you were the best one that day.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
And you were finally that dude that when you strip down, everyone's like, fuck me.
Yeah, The are you in supers? No, fuck.
Always tell people that day will come for you if you're patient enough. But so many aren't. It's I'm going to jump coaches. I'm going to abandon my training program. I'm going to switch the way I eat. I'm going to increase my drugs by twofold. Like, and a lot of times it's like, hey, we're on the right path. We just got to keep at it. Like
Yeah,
you're growing. And I think sometimes people have these really unrealistic expectations of like, well, so and so put on 20 pounds of muscle in the last year. And they don't realize that 20 pounds of muscle was a manipulated number. You know,
yeah,
I want to know hard numbers, weigh in weight to weigh in weight, 2 days out fasted weight versus 2 days out fasted weight. Those are, to me, real numbers,
yeah,
not, things that are manipulated and like, oh, Chris had me at 220 on stage. And then with 8 weeks with AJ, I was 240. Well, no shit.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like, well, yeah, you're not even on stage anymore.
Look at your glutes now compared to when I had them fucking stripped out.
Yeah,
You didn't gain 20 pounds of fucking muscle. It was probably 3 pounds of muscle and 17 of water. Like,
yeah,
good luck. Because listen, I've had people do that shit to me before and it's pissed me the fuck off.
yeah. Oh, yeah, I know. I feel you there.
So yeah, I mean, again, I really pray too, like the take-home message for some amateurs out there is this, and I've always felt that if you're in classic weight, you want to see how you look compared to those guys, I'm good with it. But also do open bodybuilding.
Yeah,
Pay the 75, 125, whatever to crossover. You're in great shape. You already have to be at the venue. You have a tan on. Like for
yeah,
fuck's sake, man, do both. It's no different than when I have guys who are in the masters and I'm like, please God, do open too.
yeah,
Well, yes, do open. You're
yeah,
fucking there.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. It's like you might as well. It's like you're not doing extra work. You're just going on stage. Shit, you got to be on stage for an extra 3 minutes.
Agreed. Like to me, you've worked all that time. Get your extra 5 to 10 minutes on stage.
Yeah,
Like, and listen, I've had guys that have done 50 plus, 40 plus, open and novice and win them all. That's a
yeah.
good that's a good day.
That's a really good day.
But it's something to be said about just getting stage time and being proud of your accomplishments. And I know there's a little bit of different posing, there's different trunks you need, so there's a little bit extra expense, right? But in my mind, like, don't all guys who train hit most musculars? All right, so that's one off the books, like that you have to practice because you've been doing those.
Yeah,
You have to hit a lat spread. Okay, cool. Should you know how to do that to train back? Yes. And then a side tricep. Okay, we're good. You're
yeah,
there. Like, and I think anyone who I've ever convinced to do that, they've always thanked me afterwards. And they're like, I'm really glad you do that. So, let's say classic is your game, and that's what you want to win at. At any show you go to, bodybuilding is going to be first. So you get all that nerves out of your system with bodybuilding. Let's say you fuck up a couple poses, you stumble on stage, you don't keep your abs sucked in. Great. Your warm up is done. Now you can focus on classic and go win that shit. Like,
yeah,
kind of always been my thought process. And I've never had someone come back and tell me they've regretted crossing over. Not once. So encouraging out there. In the women's categories, I think I feel a little bit different because it's so drastically different. Um,
yeah,
if you're doing bodybuilding, you shouldn't be doing bikini.
yeah,
I think there's maybe some crossover from physique to bodybuilding, but outside of that, I don't think
yeah.
it's too
Or
drastic.
figure and fitness.
Yes, agreed. Another great option. Yes. But any other category, if you're figure, you shouldn't do bikini. If you're wellness, you shouldn't do bikini. Stop it. Just cut it the fuck out.
Yeah,
It's not the same. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think we've adequately wrapped up that topic. I'm thrilled to see hopefully more classic guys go into bodybuilding shows now.
yeah. Same. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Who I would love to see is Ramon.
Oh, I know.
I mean, listen, if you're at the Olympia at it with an inversion table trying to make yourself taller, bro, it's time. Go up. I just do bodybuilding. Please God, I'm begging you.
Right.
Stop. If I'm adjusting your joints backstage to make you taller, like no, 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 stop it, stop it.
Yeah.
I, I will go touch on this for a second before we move on. It's like it's why I've also never pushed your weight down to make a category.
Yeah.
I think the first time you ever did heavyweights, you're like, I guess I'm going to be a heavyweight. I'm like, yeah, you are. Zero fucks given. You,
Yeah.
if you want to turn pro, that's where you're going to have to be. So fucking deal with it. Like,
Yeah.
where so many coaches would be like, bro, we got to suck you down to light heavyweight. We got to get you there. Why? You're going to heavies next year. Let's
Yep.
just rip that fucking band-aid off, bro. Let's get it over
Yeah.
with. And I know that's really weird to say to some people who are tied to a weight and a weight class. But I guess I've just always thought like, be your best, look your best, and you'll win if you're supposed to win.
Yeah.
So I've helped two guys who have turned pro in heavyweights who could have probably made light heavyweight, so they were under 210.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means it was the right day.
Yeah.
And I don't care who you are. If your legs look thin and stringy, I'm gonna feed you. It's a bodybuilding show.
Yeah.
As I said with Sean, if your legs are up and down in bodybuilding, you will lose.
Hmm.
That's a men's physique look. That's not bodybuilding.
Yeah.
So I hate to break it to you. Um, I did want to touch on something really cool because I had a client success story that I just posted on Instagram. The guy's name's Bill, and he got second at his pro master pro show this weekend, and he came off of double quad tendon ruptures.
Really?
Man, so he came to me in 2021 December, so end of the year, and he's like, I've had a great pro career, and I hadn't been on stage in 2 years at that point, and I want to just make a full comeback and let's see where we can take this. And listen, I know I'm going to butcher his history, but I know he told me when he was like a teenager, early bodybuilder, he didn't lose until he got to the universe. So very successful young guy, very successful pro, and so we were cranking it 12 weeks out. He was playing a students versus teachers basketball game and ruptured both of his quad tendon.
Damn.
Yeah, devastated. Like, I mean, he was so fucked up, man.
Yeah.
And I remember he asked if he could call me, and I was like, sure. And he told me the story, and he vowed to me on the phone that night that he's like, I'll be back. Just let's put things on hold, and I'll come back to you. And like, listen, because I worked in the physical therapy world for so long, like I knew what he was gonna have to go through. And
Hmm.
the probability of you getting back on a bodybuilding stage after that at that age in your 60s is like, man, slim to none.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he came back to me after he had like post-op and got cleared by the doctors and shit. And it was such tough sledding. Like just getting him back into eating 6 times a day and getting a remote good leg workout. Upper body was no issue. No, he had a pec tear, so we had to always work around that. And being in your 60s, and I got it's what kind of a fun story. So when he came back to me, he was like, "Hey, Chris, like I'm gonna get remarried, and can we get in good shape for that?" And he was pretty heavy. So I sucked his weight down. He was in pretty good shape going on his honeymoon. And then when he got back, it was a fucking disaster.
Yeah.
And like most people who are delusional, he's like, I want to do a bodybuilding show. And I said, okay, let's pump the brakes. Let's come up with a long-term game plan. Knowing that he's in his 60s, I still did not give a fuck. There's a right way to do this.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, cool. We're gonna build your calories up and build them up, and it's gonna suck, and you're gonna hate the way you look, and you think you're gonna keep getting fatter, and you won't. And I was like, we're pulling your drugs to TRT, and that is it. And we're just going to get you in a good starting spot. And then at 30 weeks out, we started this prep. And we got to a point where his body was like, he didn't want to eat a lot of food. And I was like, I don't care. We're going to keep shoving it in your fucking face. And we did, and we did. And we got to a point where I think it was about 12 weeks out. I said, okay, we're going to jump on the gas of fat loss. and that's what we did. And his food was very low for a very long time. And then at 3 weeks out, he was in full condition, glutes stripped,
Mm.
low back striated. He was in shape. So I just started slowly feeding him up. And I think the last 2 weeks he was eating 400 grams of carbs or more a day
Oh, fuck yeah.
and doing like 20 minutes of cardio at most.
Hmm.
A lot of times it was off. It was like he'd email me. I was like, no cardio today. Where do you want
Yep.
my food? I was like, okay, cool. We ate 400 yesterday. You lost 2 pounds. Let's eat 650 today and add fat.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's good.
he cruised into the show and he's like, I've never felt like this ever. And we just talked on the phone this morning and he said, man, when you had me at like under 60 grams of carbs for 6 weeks, he's like, I thought I was going to literally die. And he's like, I just thought I was in a black hole and I was never going to get out of it. And he's like, I just feel myself wasting away. But you just kept saying, you're getting better. Stop. Don't think about it. And, the amount of times I'd have to respond back and be like, hey, pump the brakes. He's like, what do you want to change? I'm like, nothing. It's working. We'll do it. No, we don't need to do anything. Don't do anything different. And, I share this story with everyone because it was really cool to see him on stage and in shape. And he's like, man, the compliments I got for my conditioning was like next level. And he's like, I know I was a shell of myself in terms of like muscularity. He said, but this condition is he's like, this is the best I've ever achieved in my life. And that was so rewarding for me. Um,
Yeah.
to know that you could battle back from that and then go through a 30-week prep at 67 years old, man. Fuck, I hope to be sitting on a beach fucking watching the waves crash.
Yeah. Yeah. For real.
And to know, like, I'm sure every leg day, I'm sure every cardio session, his knees probably felt horrible. Like,
Yeah.
but it's truly cool for me and rewarding for me to know that, like, when you have desire, focus, and passion for something, like, it burns hot. And he told me this morning, which was one of the coolest things anyone's ever said to me. He's like, Chris, he's like, I know that was my last time on stage, but I will always be a bodybuilder. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, like you just gave me cold chills. Like, fuck. Because I mean, I think even though you and I may step away from this at some point in a capacity of where we are now, like that will always be in our blood. Like
Yeah.
you can't fucking turn that shit off. Like,
Yeah.
and then so that was really cool. So I just want to give him a shout out and say, hey man, like major respect for getting all that damn fat off and trusting the process.
Yeah.
But and I think you know this from working with me. Like I'm fairly unorthodox with the way I do and see things, and it's easy for you now because you know how my brain works. But for someone who's never worked with me, and he's had a lot of big name coaches, he's like, this is so different than what I've ever done. And I'm like, yeah, but it can yield a cool result if you trust it. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to think the last thing I had jotted down on my notes here. Already after your leg training has changed, your legs are noticeably bigger.
Told you we're back.
Yeah, yeah. It's wild, right? Like you dealt with all that bullshit with that bone growing in your quad.
Yeah.
Then we had the hamstring tear, and you had to like chill out with legs. They didn't reduce in size, and then now you go back to them, and I just watch them just ballooning up. So this weird routine of your leg training being put on pause and then reignited is clearly working. So
Yeah. Yeah. You know, write this stuff down.
I know I need to start programming it, right?
Yeah.
I think that also speaks to like just your calmness and ability to have faith in a plan because most guys would panic and probably re-injure themselves because
Yeah.
they want to get ahead of themselves. And I remember when I was like building your post USA's training program, I was like, I wonder how many guys like wouldn't follow this, because on paper it looked for you very weak or light-handed, however you want to look at that, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like, fuck it. When I get back to it, I'm gonna get back to it. And it's that I think that speaks to your mental capacity for trusting the process and just believing in your own abilities. Um, did you want to talk about that at all? Like the thought process you have when something like that happens, I think is huge. So if you could share that with our audience, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah. Well shit, when I tore my hamstring, I think I called you. I called you post training and I was like, well, these aren't going anywhere, but we're not gonna be able to train these for a second,
Uh-uh.
you know. And then as things started getting better, it was like it was just an opportunity to keep training everything else as hard,
Yeah.
you know. So it was just like, all right, cool. I knew where I needed to go,
Yes.
so it was like, all right, cool. Let's just keep walking that way. Versus like, yeah, I could have gotten really pissed off about it, or like, sad and just like, but like, it's gonna be worse if I want to just load up a leg press and send it before I'm ready and re-injure myself and
Correct.
make things worse. And better safe than sorry is like how things work really well,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
you know. And I mean, I knew for a fact, like because of like when I that stupid when I grew a bone in my quad, um, the not training my legs and still staying on diet, they didn't just fall off, you know. So it's like, okay, cool, you know, stay on diet, eat what you're supposed to. They're not gonna go, they make you lose some volume or some fullness, but like, okay,
The biggest thing to me there, I think that people forget is it's way harder for muscle to go away if it's earned the hard way.
yeah,
And let me speak specifically about that, right? Like, I'm not saying that people earn it the easy way I'm not trying to say that. But the way you had to grow your legs, the body wants to hold on to it.
yeah,
Now, if you were in a coma sedentary with zero walking or zero movement, the probability of them sticking around is slim to none. Like,
yeah,
I'm not trying to say that, but you're still making your body propel through space. You're over 200 pounds. Like, you're still doing cardio on a bike. You are still giving the muscle a reason to stick around. You're eating your meals, you're taking your supplements. It's not just going to go away and walk away one day.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so many, I think, get paranoid. I mean, even people fight me on off weeks. I'm going to get smaller. Oh, yeah. You
You
get
know,
the,
actually, something really funny.
what's that?
The guy who beat me, Alex, he's doing a show. He's doing nationals
Okay.
coming up.
Yeah.
So he just had a spine injury, and he actually is unable to train.
Okay.
He hasn't trained this entire prep.
Jesus Christ.
He is 182 point something,
Okay.
peeled, has only been doing mobility work.
That is wild.
And I am gonna throw that guy. That guy has gone through. He's what 25 days out now, and yeah, he may have lost a little bit of muscle,
Right.
but he's also trained this many times.
That's
What
insane.
his diet has been flawless the whole time,
Okay.
and he's done some things but he's legitimately dealing with a spine injury. So obviously, decided it was a good time to do a bodybuilding show, you know, and like I see that, and I'm just like, dude, that's got to be the most impressive. Because yeah, I mean, like once you have the muscle, having it's so much harder to lose it
Yeah.
if you have it.
Agreed.
You know, I've said this so many times. Holding muscle is so much different than building muscle. You
Agreed.
know, and holding muscle. You know, like we've talked about this with bikini athletes before. Like, you don't have to do the same things you did to build it to hold it.
Agreed. Yep.
You know, and so many people overlooked that. They're like, "Oh, I'm gonna lose all this size because I took a week off." And it's like, if you decided to not eat the entire time and take a week off, sure.
Right. Yeah.
But like, if you're so scared about losing muscle from taking a rest day, man, like I get it, but like at the same time, it's like your muscle's there for a reason.
Right.
It
I,
didn't happen over. You didn't just wake up one day and like, oh man, I got these muscles. It was a combination of years.
right. Yeah. You know, I hate to admit this on the internet, but it's just the truth. And I think I've said it in my YouTube videos. This is the least amount of volume I have ever put towards my legs and the least amount of intensity. Now, when I say intensity techniques, drop sets, rest pulls, crazy shit.
Yeah,
And my legs have not went anywhere. I think they're actually a little bit better.
yeah,
Like, and yes, that's because I put more of that. effort, energy, and intensity towards my upper body, but I'm still training my legs weekly, right? And
Hmm.
they aren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, Chris and I just did a leg day on the newbie because I was having some like my outer sweep on my left quad was like a little weak. Like it didn't feel like it wanted to fire right.
Hmm.
We did one hard set of leg curls, one hard set of leg adductors. We did two sets. Well, actually, it was one double leg extension and then just my left leg. So two sets there. And then we did one set of hack squats. And when I finished, he was like, "Let me see what your legs are like." He's like, "What in the fuck?"
Yeah.
They were completely blown out. And I mean, it's miserable to walk today. Like it hurts to walk. And he messaged me this morning. He's like, "What's your soreness like?" And I was like, 10 out of 10. It's horrible. And he's like, "I can't believe we did that little of work." It was like maybe 35 minutes.
Hmm.
And he said, your legs were, this is the biggest they've been. And I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, man. And I think so many people like need to fucking hear that, not only from like a volume perspective. I know not everyone has a newbie, but completely ignore that shit. I don't train on that weekly for my lower body. Um, and what needs to be taken away from that is like if you put more effort, focus, and intensity into the singular set as opposed to thinking, I need to do this much shit, you know,
Yeah.
that will
Yeah.
truly go a long way. And then speaking of from a fact of like muscle disappearing, John gave me that advice years ago and I ignored it because my ego I think was tied to my leg training, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna actually try it this year, and he was right. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I don't
And
know.
John's another great example of how hard it is to lose muscle. Like when he retired, how much food was he eating?
Little,
Like,
none, bikini girl
you
shit.
know, yeah, and like he just was had most of, he stayed that way for a while,
Yeah,
just fall off.
he still looked like a freak to the day that he died.
Yeah, exactly.
Like 99% of this population would have killed for his muscle that he had when he passed away. Like,
Yeah,
yes, his legs weren't cartoonish anymore, but they were striated, stripped, and vascular from his hip to his ankle.
yeah,
All that muscle he added to his back wasn't there, but it was still the same shape. His arms were still big. Like, so I think a lot of times people like fucking forget that shit. Is like he was missing more testosterone replacement shots than he was taking. He was eating 2 meals a day, running multiple businesses, and still bigger and better than most because all of those decades of hard training sessions and eating.
yeah,
So yeah, I think it's a great place to end it, man. Like
yeah,
maybe turn that brain off of fear. So if your coach suggests an off week, embrace that shit. It's for a reason. I
yeah,
would never make you take an off week if you didn't need it.
yeah,
I just wouldn't. If
yeah,
you tell me, Chris, like the weights are flying up, my food's going down, I feel great, I'm sleeping good, I'm never gonna tell you to take a week off. On the flip side of that, you say, Chris, like the weight feels heavy, my digestion's slow, I'm always tired. I mean, let's take a week. Let's take a few
yeah,
like it, you and I know aren't big believers in deloads.
yeah,
We're gonna train. But consider that and know that if you still eat all your food, particularly protein, and you don't do things that are stupid on your off week, meaning missing sleep, not taking your supplements, you're not going to disappear. You actually look better when you come back on Monday.
hmm,
Yeah, rest day is just important as the training days. That is the most valuable lesson I can pass on to you guys. I promise right now, if you do 4 to 5 training sessions in the off season, you'll grow better than 6 or 7.
yep,
Weird, right? I'm sure you'll completely go over people's head and they'll say he's a fucking liar. Volume works. Fun fact, it doesn't matter if you're natural or enhanced. It's still the same rule, in my opinion. I don't care what anybody says.
yep, yep,
I gained 20 pounds of muscle naturally with John in just under 3 years. And he had me train 4 days a week, and that's it. I was doing 6. So fun fact there. Until next time, Chris Dave, we are done.